Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Standard, and today I'm going to talk about how to install Phobos 2.0 into your existing Akka.NET applications. So we've just recently announced Phobos 2.0, which is built around OpenTelemetry, the new standard for doing application performance monitoring and observability in .NET. If you're interested in learning a bit more about Phobos 2 or learning a bit about OpenTelemetry, we have some links in the description to videos we've filmed about both of those. Now let's go ahead and jump right in and create a brand new demo application that we can use to upgrade to Phobos 2, just to show you how this process works. So I'm going to start by taking a look at our .NET New templates that we maintain for Akka.NET here at Petabridge. We use these in a bunch of our own projects, but they're also open source and available for end users to use as well. And if we scroll down here, you'll see that we have a couple different template options. We're going to use this PB Akka Web template, which basically integrates ASP.NET Core with Akka.Cluster. So I'll pull up my command line here. I've already installed the templates. I'll go ahead and create a new instance of our Akka Web template. All right, and that should have been scaffolded into the Phobos install demo directory. I'll take a look. Looks good to me. I'll go ahead and open the application inside Rider real quick, and we're going to begin the process of installing Phobos. All right, so I have my Phobos install demo project up and running inside JetBrains Rider. I am going to manage my NuGet packages for the Phobos install demo project, which is where my program.cs is. In fact, if I go and expand this, you'll see that we have our host builder here, and we're using a startup class to go and configure this application. So I can step inside of there and see where all of the Akka.NET configuration currently lives. I also have an Akka service class right here, which exposes the actor system and other components to the dependency injection system. So one of the other things I'm going to do as part of this tutorial is, in addition to installing Phobos, I'm also going to replace a lot of this code that's in here with Akka.Hosting. We have a dedicated video on Akka.Hosting that I'll link to here, but this is the new Hoconless way of being able to manage Akka.NET applications with the best practices, and it also gives you a fluent typed interface for being able to configure it. That way you don't have to worry about messing around with Hocon strings if you don't want to. So we're going to go ahead and also convert this sample to use that as well. Let's go back to managing our NuGet packages here. And the key package that we want to install is Phobos.Hosting. This is going to bring in all the other Phobos packages from SDK bin. And by the way, I can see the Phobos.Hosting package because I've added my SDK bin credentials to my global NuGet configuration for this machine. So I'm already authenticated to download these packages. You will need to do that, or you'll need to add a NuGet.config file that has your Phobos credentials baked into it. I prefer to go ahead and authenticate the machine rather than the code sample. It's more secure that way, in my opinion. But it's up to you in terms of how you want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and install Phobos.Hosting into my Phobos install demo project. So let's give that a try. And we get a NuGet package downgrade warning. And this is because at the moment, we are using some older versions of Akka.NET inside my project. So what I'm going to do is get rid of these references to Akka.Cluster and Akka.Dependency injection, because both of those are going to be transitively referenced by Phobos. And then I'm going to rerun my install. And it looks like that has now succeeded. If I go ahead and recompile my project, I should have no issues so far. Let's go ahead and run that. And it looks like everything passed. Okay, so we haven't actually made any changes yet. All we've done is just install the Phobos.Hosting NuGet package. Let's go ahead and start working on actually configuring Akka.NET using Akka.Hosting as the next step here. So the first thing we're going to do is convert the solution to use Akka.Hosting. I'm going to go to my startup.cs where we currently configure our generic host that we're using to run this app. I think this is a .NET Core 3.1 app. If you're using .NET 6, you can use all the minimal APIs for this. It looks exactly the same. But what I'm going to do initially here is just comment out these two service registrations because we don't really need them anymore. And instead I'm going to do services.add Akka. Now the first parameter I think it's going to want from me is the name of my actor system. So I'll go ahead and call it cluster sys And then I have a couple of little delegates I can call here. One that creates an Akka configuration builder, and another one that creates an Akka configuration builder, but also passes in a service provider, which is what I can use to resolve some of the other services that are attached to this I service collection if I want. And this is all deferred, so these aren't actually registered until after the process launches. So let me go ahead and just add the simpler one. We don't really need the service provider in here, so I'll go ahead and do config builder. Create my little delegate. And we're going to start adding some features here. So first thing I'll do is we were using Akka.remote before. So we'll go ahead and add with remoting. And I'll go ahead and pass in some settings for that. Let's see. Host name, I'll hard code this for now. Let's do localhost. And we'll do port 9909. That should be good. And then we'll go ahead and turn on clustering. And I can pass in a cluster options class. I could also resolve that cluster options class using Microsoft.extensions.configuration if I wanted to. But I'm just going to hard code it. Call this Phobos, and we'll go ahead and create a set of seed nodes. Go ahead and do a new array here, and I'll do address.parse Akka.tcp. Did I spell localhost wrong? Yeah, I did. Let me fix that. I'm going to do Akka.tcp cluster sys at localhost 9909. And that should be good for configuring, remoting, and clustering. Next, I need to go ahead and start my actors. So let me go ahead and do start actors. And this will go ahead and give me a little delegate that has a copy of the actor system and the actor registry. And we want both in this case. So the first group of actors I'm going to start are the actors that I'm currently instantiating inside my Akka service. So that would be this actor down here, this cluster system actor of console actor call. Okay, so I just need to go ahead and keep this. Let me go ahead and grab that. Go back to startup.cs. We'll go ahead and do system actor of. Let me go and clean that up. So that'll be that actor reference. Then I'm going to use the registry. This registry is going to be bound to the service collection that we're creating right now. So any actor that I register to this registry can also be accessed through things like my ASP.NET controllers if I want. So I'm going to go ahead and call try register. I'm going to pass in the console actor as my key. So we use a type key in the system. Then I pass in my actor reference that matches it. And then finally, I'm going to do a start actors call for petabridge.command, just so I can keep all of that running again as well. So let me go to Akka service, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this code. Petabridge.command will eventually have its own extension method for doing all of this, but we just haven't implemented one yet. And I need to go ahead and rename this variable. And that should do it. I believe we're now fully configured. Oh, I need to go ahead and change this to an array. Do that real fast. And wrap that together. That all looks good to me. I can go ahead and delete the Akka service if I want, which I will. Go ahead and delete that. And if I take a look at my endpoints down here where we do ASP.NET, rather than getting an iConsole reporter, I am going to go ahead and get a hold of the actor registry here. I'm going to do, I'll rename this variable registry. And I can do var console reporter equals registry dot get console actor. And then I could do console reporter.tell. And that'll do it. Cool. That should be enough to go ahead and run ASP.NET inside the sample. Let me go ahead and save my work here. And let's run it. So I'll go ahead and press run. Looks like my Akka.Net application formed a one node cluster. That's exactly what I expected. I'll go ahead and open up my web applications. Let me pull that tab over here. And we can see my hello world going. Great. Looks like everything in our application is now working. That is splendid. Okay, well, the next thing we're going to need to do now that we've installed Akka.Hosting is we need to go ahead and install OpenTelemetry, which has a little bit of work involved, but it's honestly not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to Writer. And I'm going to take some of the material from our previous video that we just did on how OpenTelemetry works in .NET, and I'm going to copy and paste all of the NuGet packages that we need to install in order to get OpenTelemetry to work with Prometheus and Jaeger as our, respectively, our metrics and our tracing hosts. So let me go ahead and just grab all of these. Although I'm going to need to define this as a variable inside my directory.build.props. So let me go ahead and grab this. I'll paste all that in. And then I need to, let's see, I'll go ahead and add an existing item. We go to directory.build.props. Yeah, here we go. That looks good. I'll go ahead and shut my process down for the time being, and then I'll rebuild it. Okay, looks good so far. So all of our packages exist. That's fantastic. Next, I need to go to startup.cs. And we need to go ahead and configure OpenTelemetry in addition to configuring Akka.net. So what I'm going to do first here is do services.add OpenTelemetry tracing. And we'll go ahead and call this our trace builder. All right. The other thing I'm going to do up here is create a new resource builder. .create default. And then I think I need to pass in some variables here. Create default. Nope, guess not. And I need to go ahead and add service. There we go. That's what I was looking for. And we'll call this service name Phobos install demo. And I'm not going to go ahead and necessarily configure all of these properties, the instance ID and the service instance ID. But typically, I will either generate those using, well, actually, you know what? I may as well. We'll go ahead and do service instance ID is how I prefer to do this. And I'm going to go ahead and add that reference. This is from system.net.dns. And then for service version, I'll go ahead and typically use the assembly version for that, if that's an issue. So the first thing I'm going to do on my trace builder here is I'm going to go ahead and add, let's see, I think it's, what's the name of this extension method? Add source, add instrumentation, let's see, set resource builder. There we go, that's what I was looking for. Go ahead and add resource. This is what basically allows the metadata that we're defining in here. So the name of this service and the service instance ID and the version of the service. This will go ahead and get exposed in the tracing data that we can see in Jaeger later. That's why we want to go ahead and add it. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to go ahead and have trace builder dot add. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and add my Jaeger exporter. That'll export my data to Jaeger. We'll go ahead and add ASP.NET Core instrumentation. We'll go ahead and call add HTTP client instrumentation, and we'll add SQL client instrumentation. So we still haven't added Phobos yet, but you know what? I can go ahead and start that here. If I go ahead and do add Phobos instrumentation, that'll go ahead and subscribe to the activity source that is built into Phobos. So that should be everything we need to go ahead and begin producing traces inside our application. We still haven't turned Phobos on inside Akka.net yet, but the OpenTelemetry tracing piece is done. And OpenTelemetry metrics is going to look pretty similar to this. Let's go ahead and do add OpenTelemetry metrics. We'll call this, you know what, just to make it simple, I'm going to call this trace builder for the time being as well. I'm going to copy all of this. Some of it won't work. Let's see. Oops, I gotta fix that. Add ASP.NET Core instrumentation. Yep, gotta do that. There is no SQL client instrumentation right now for metrics, and there's definitely not a Jaeger exporter. So instead, I'll go ahead and add Prometheus exporter, which is what we need there. And just to make this clean, I'm going to refactor it and change it to metrics builder. That looks pretty good. There's one last thing we need to do in order to support Prometheus metrics. Prometheus works by exposing an HTTP route on the /metrics URI. And we need to go ahead and register a route for that in ASP.NET. So we'll go add, let's see. What's the name of this method called exactly? Use OpenTelemetry Prometheus scraping endpoint. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. And I'll just add a little comment here. So we'll configure Prometheus. We're not going to do it in this code sample, but we can configure Prometheus to discover these different services, and it'll go ahead and be configured to scrape that metrics endpoint on like a 5-second interval to go and gather metrics. So that's what we're doing here. Next, I think that should do it. So let me go ahead and run this real quick. Make sure that everything still works. Looking good so far. If I go back to my browser and hit refresh, the app's still running. And if I go to the /metrics URI, we can go ahead and see these are some of the built-in ASP.NET Core metrics. This is used for measuring the distribution of status codes and latencies, and I think it correlates it back to individual routes, I think. So that's what we've got going on here, so that's looking pretty good. Now I also have running behind the scenes Jaeger, which is our tracing system. And if I go to my Phobos install demo down here, I can go ahead and see some of the HTTP traces that I've manually generated just by querying the site. So we know that our metrics are being produced, and we know that our traces are being produced. So all that's left for us to do now is we just need to go ahead and turn Phobos on inside Akka.NET, and we'll be good to go at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Rider back up. And to turn Phobos on, let me go ahead and shut my process down. To turn Phobos on, I just go back to my startup class, and we go to our Akka configuration builder. And after I've enabled remoting and clustering, I just type with Phobos. And then it's going to ask me for some potential settings here. The most important one is I need to specify that we're running Phobos with Akka.cluster. And then other than that, I can pass in like a trace filter if I want here, which will allow me to filter out certain types of unwanted messages from being traced. And we have some other options you could pass in here as well. But we'll be good to go at this point. And now let me go ahead and try running the sample again with Phobos installed. And this should take just a moment here. Great, looks like everything's working. And if I go back to my application, and let's say I go to the home page, hit refresh, and I go back to Jaeger, and I hit find traces, I should see that these home page operations now have 2 spans instead of 1. And the reason why is that we're also recording these Akka.message.receive messages. These are the operations that Phobos is instrumenting and is capturing as a result of all of our HTTP traffic that ends up creating a request to one of these actors. So you've had a chance to see the tracing component of Phobos. Let's take a look at the metrics, going back to our Prometheus endpoint here. And you can now see a whole bunch of Akka.NET metrics appearing. So we have these Akka messages.receive metric here. This is a counter that tells you how many messages an actor has processed. We have some histograms that are keeping track of mailbox death. Another histogram down here that keeps track of actor message processing latency. We have some metrics for keeping track of logging events, the number of them that are occurring. These are counters, I believe. Then we have some ones for keeping track of the number of actors that have been started and stopped. And then down here, we have a gauge that's being used to keep track of the total number of members of a cluster inside of here as well. So these are all the different Phobos metrics. And as you can see, this tutorial application was primarily about converting an existing app using Akka.Hosting. Once we started using Akka.Hosting, installing Phobos took very little time. So that's one of the things that's worth doing anyway. Akka.Hosting is going to simplify your configuration. It's going to make sure your actor system is run with the absolute best practices, and it makes dependency injection a lot easier to do in Akka.NET. But then on top of that, it makes it very easy to work with tools like Phobos, for instance. So thank you very much. If you have any questions about how to install Phobos 2 without using Akka.Hosting, we have a full guide on our website that'll show you how to do that. But otherwise, please leave any questions or comments you might have in the comments. But otherwise, please leave any questions or comments you might have below. Thank you very much.